is Coffee On, and I'm Carmen. Coffee On is about connecting people with coffee, and today we will talk about picking the bottle and a little bit of philosophy of wine with head sommelier, Vinodhan Veloo. So he's the head sommelier of Cloudstreet restaurant, and we'll be doing this together. So I'll be drinking coffee, and he will be sharing with us about wine. I will post the link below as well, so feel free to. We love to include you in our conversation. Send him some love. Hello.
Hello, how are you?
Very well. Did I manage to pronounce your name correctly? Vinodhan Veloo, right?
Yeah, close enough. Well, I felt a lot worse.
What's the worst?
Speaking that is worse. But yeah, thanks. That was good. Thanks for the introduction. Thanks for having me on the show. And yeah, I hope we have lots of interesting things to talk about today.
Yeah, I hope we have lots of interesting things. So previously you have worked at Odette, and now you are the head sommelier of restaurant Cloudstreet. So how have you made Cloudstreet special?
Yeah, well, I mean, working at Odette really shaped my understanding of wine. It was, it has to be one of the most important gigs of my life. Prior to that, I was in restaurants as well. Some of you might remember a restaurant called Bacchanalia. So that was where everything began. And Odette was a good stepping stone for me.
You have clearly a lot of fans. Everyone's saying hi.
Yeah, lots of fans apparently. And Odette taught me a lot, I think. And now with Cloudstreet, I've sought to do something that was original, was different. It was an opportunity for me to put together a lot of things that I'm very passionate about, all in one place. So a bit about Cloudstreet. I mean, Cloudstreet is a modern or contemporary fine dining restaurant. Our chef Rishi, he's originally, he's Sri Lankan by ethnicity, or by nationality rather. But spent a lot of time in Australia working. So he's worked in some top restaurants in Australia, and has been in Singapore, I think, for like 6 years, so thereabout, maybe more. So with Cloudstreet, he wanted to elevate what he's already been doing with Cheek by Jowl before, which is a 1 Michelin star restaurant. That's been turned into a bistro, so it's a lot more sort of casual. It's only a la carte. And with Cloudstreet, it was a degustation or a set menu sort of space where you come in and you have between 6 to 8 courses with curated wine pairings. We've got an extensive wine list. And I think with the wine list, Rishi wanted something really exceptional. He wanted something that would, be one of the best in Singapore. So, me, I come from a communications background. So I studied writing. So I wanted to sort of incorporate that into a wine program. So I read a lot of magazines. I used to collect magazines as well. And when I set out to make the wine list, I thought I'd make it special by kind of treating it like a magazine and building something that's got blurbs and stuff to guide you along, instead of just a conventional wine list where grapes or where wines were put according to grape variety or region. I decided to categorize the wines by feeling or themes. So I brought home a copy of the wine list, but I know everything is the other way. But yeah, so this is how it kind of looks. So for example, Crème de la Crémence. I mean, this is a list of lesser-known sparkling wines from France that are not from Champagne, which I think not a lot of people know about. Such great alpine heights. I'll help you read the text. This is this is a list of wines that are from alpine regions around the world. So it's never really about the grape variety or the region, but really about style and expression. And also it's I felt, when speaking to winemakers, they often talk about their wines not as a grape variety or a region. It's really about an expression, and so I really wanted to get that across and into the program and what we do over here at Cloudstreet. So yeah, and I'm very happy to know that it's been very well received by everyone, most people at least.
Should we talk about the wine that you are drinking today as well? Maybe we can talk about that first.
Well, I'm way ahead of you. Already been started a bit early today. But well, yeah. I mean, today normally I like to drink stuff that's strange and stuff that you never find anywhere else. But today I'm having something pretty classic. So this is Pinot Noir from Burgundy. I know again the label is flipped around, but so Burgundy, in France, it's got to be one of the most important wine regions of the world. I'm sure everyone's heard of Burgundy. It's one of the oldest winemaking regions as well within France, and I think some of the wines are very sought after. But I mean, as a result of that, I mean, Burgundy wines can be really expensive and I think very prohibitive in terms of buying and price points. So if you like to have Burgundy, I think it's a good idea to always be on your toes. Look for the newest or the younger winemakers who are coming into the scene, who've received vineyards from their parents or grandparents or whatever, and have started making good wines with those. So this is a good example. So this is by a man called Pierre Girardin. He is the son of Vincent Girardin, who used to make wines under Vincent Girardin, the domain, which has been sold some years ago. I think at the time he had about 20 hectares of vineyards, but sold most of it and kept about 4 to 5 hectares for his son. So 2017 was the first vintage that his son started making wines. This is a 2017 as well. So his first bottling. It's made with Pinot Noir. So this is from, Pinot Noir, everyone's heard of the grape. It's one of the more well-known international grape varieties. Éclat de calcaire means explosion of limestone. And it speaks of the minerality in this wine. And again, minerality is a very sort of debated thing, but I think everybody perceives minerality quite differently. For me, with this wine, it really shows. On the nose, it's got this really nice sort of like tension about the wines and a steeliness almost. But also shout out to Max for this wine. So Max is behind Les Bistrots du Sommelier, and this is where you can get your hands on this bottle at Les Bistrots du Sommelier. He's also got a sort of a promo
right?
Yeah, so for everybody watching, if you put Cloudstreet as a promo code on Les Bistrots du Sommelier, you get 10% off. And I've been told like the wines just landed, like the rest of the wines by Pierre Girardin just landed today or the day before, I think. So it's available now in their store as well.
Nice. Let me just quickly put that in the link.
Yeah, but the one I think you put on as well is the German Pinot Noir, which is another one that I've got here. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, if you like Burgundy and you don't really want to spend the money on Burgundy wines, which I know can be very, expensive. Germany is another good source. So Germany has the third most plantings of Pinot Noir in the world. So after France and the US, it's also being sort of talked about as the next Burgundy almost. And the wines are very impressive. Really, to see the newer winemakers really, make some exciting examples. It's quite nice to see. This one's by Zierreisen. So these guys are from Baden. Baden is in the south of Germany, just across the French border. It's also the only region in Germany to have to be in the EU Zone B. So this is a climate zone. whereas the rest of Germany belongs to a cooler climate zone. Baden is the only region that belongs to a warmer zone. This puts the region on par with regions like Champagne and Alsace, in fact. And it shows in the wine. The wines are a lot riper, deeper, slightly fuller, and more earthier in style as well. So there you go. And this you can get from Empilia.
Nice. Excellent. Could you also share with us your philosophy on wine?
Yeah. So I don't come from a wine drinking family, so I'm probably the first generation to drink wine. At home, we drink a lot of beer and blended whiskeys. So for me, everything I know about wine is through my reading, through my studies. I'm currently pursuing my diploma in wine and spirits in London. I was supposed to have my final exams just 3 days ago in London, but that got postponed by a year now, so I'll be taking that next year. So everything that I've learned about wine is through my own reading. I read a lot. I enjoy reading about wine, so I've invested quite heavily on that part. But also drinking wine is a huge pleasure. It's a huge, it's a really fun thing to do. So for me, like my philosophy when I think about wine, it's a nice sort of in between of being the pleasures of your flesh, and also it's something that also nourishes the intellect. And this is something. Okay, I can't remember whether it's I think it's Socrates, but I remember sometime many years ago reading about the pleasures of the intellect and how you should eclipse that. Pleasures of the flesh, your appetitive nature, of you wanting to eat and drink, and how you should sort of eclipse that also, or sort of like balance that with your intellect and I think wine sort of brings that, or blurs the line. So you get to enjoy drinking it, but also to learn a lot about wine. So it's a nice in between, if that came across well.
Yeah, that's very similar to how I look at coffee as well, actually.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Which wine changed your life, or which wine that's got you started in this whole journey?
Well, I don't think there's one wine, but I mean, for me, like if I have one wine,
like, maybe not specifically to the bottle of wine, but how was it that is so different from like conventional wine that you've drunk?
Yeah, well, I mean, there are many wines that have really sort of like made me go like, wow, what is this? And I think orange wines is something that did that for me. Right, when you start thinking that, oh, okay, so wines are just white, red, sparkling, and fortified, and then suddenly you have this whole category of wines called orange wines.
Yeah,
I think that really sort of excited me for a while. I've got a whole list of orange wines on my wine list as well. So orange wines is a whole new category. It's not new, but it's a category of wine on its own. Yeah.
It's also known as skin contact, right?
Yeah. So it's known as skin contact wines or amber wines. Well, the easiest way to explain orange wine is imagine making white wine with red grapes. So it's like making red wine with white grapes. Sorry. So basically you're leaving the skins of the white grapes in the juice, which you normally don't do with white wine. And this way you extract a lot of character, texture, color, tannins, all sorts of things, and it becomes a completely different thing. I think very important regions for orange wines would be the ones from northeast of Italy, at the Slovenian-Croatian border. That region, and definitely has some very exciting winemakers and very high quality producers that you should check out. And yeah, if there's one wine that I think I still cannot forget having, it's actually a really it was a Nebbiolo from the northwest of Italy, from the Piemonte region. It's by a very famous family called Gaia, basically, and yeah, it was the Contesa wine from 1999. And I think that wine to me was just absolutely mind-blowing, and I'm a big fan.
What's your favorite wine resource and author?
Oh yeah, so well, I don't have one author that I could name because there's just a variety of authors that I think that have written some amazing books. Well, one book that I really like is this one. Again, it's flipped around so you can't read it. I'm not sure. Well, this one says Terroir and Other Myths of Wine Growing. This is by Mark A. Matthews, and it's a book that sort of destroys a lot of misconceptions or misinformation about wine that's been circulated even today, even in academic texts. You can find some misinformation about the world of wine and all sorts of things. So like this really questions the idea of terroir, whether or not you can taste the soil in a wine, and a lot of things that are in practice today still don't have enough scientific sort of proof to show that it actually does anything to the wine. So this is something that I definitely recommend you check out. I'm sure you got the links and you're going to put that below as well. This is another good one by Rod Phillips. So Rod Phillips is seen as like the authority for wine history. He's a historian as well, if I'm not mistaken. And yeah, this is pretty cool. So French wine and history. It talks about the history of French wines from the very beginning till quite recently, and you can see the evolution and progress wines have sort of made in the country. And I could go on, but just one more. Neuroenology. So this is it's a book that helps you understand how tasting works in your brain, the neural pathway that aromas take in your brain. It goes through parts of your brain that process emotion, memory, and stuff like that. So this is why smell and taste it's so personal to all of us, and we feel very strongly about our opinions when it comes to smelling and tasting, and how when you smell something you remember something really just almost immediately, and that connection is all explained here along with tasting wine. And yeah, definitely recommend it by a neurobiologist as well.
Awesome. Since we're on the topic of recommendation, as a sommelier, what 3 bottles would you recommend for us to get if we are just getting into wine? Like good introductory wine.
Yeah, well, so I mean, again, this is, really, it really depends on where you or what you like to drink. I mean, if you're into like really simple, if you're into very fresh, crisp, aromatic wines, then maybe you should look at, wines like Torrontés or even like Sauvignon Blanc and Gewürztraminer. But if you like fuller bodied styles of red wines, for example, and there's a whole different category. But I mean, if you left it up to me, if you wanted me to sort of give someone a sort of like a little crash course into wine, I think I'd start with the Chenin Blanc from the Loire. I think Chenin Blanc, value and complexity, I think it really combines the two really well. I mean, wines from the Loire are very affordable. And on top of that, with Chenin Blanc, you get flavors, that are really honeyed, very appley, red apples, very floral. You get a really good crisp acidity, something that makes the wines very gastronomic. You can have it with a variety of different foods. And also Chenin Blanc from the Loire is made in so many different styles, from sparkling wines to still white wine to very sweet wines as well. So it's a whole variety. It's a very versatile grape. And the second wine I recommend, I think, would be an orange wine, I guess. Try something different, something you're not exposed to, be a little bit adventurous. So again, like I explained earlier, try something from Collio on the northeast of Italy. They are winemakers that have been making for a while really exciting styles of orange wines. made with indigenous grape varieties that you don't find anywhere else. So these are grapes that really are planted there, and that's it.
Awesome.
And third one, I got one here actually. You might have heard of this grape. Sorry, it's called Zinfandel.
Nice.
So that's a grape variety from, originally from Croatia.
The bottle you have is, the one you would recommend is from US, right?
Yeah, but the one I recommend that you try, I mean, of course, are the ones from California. Because it's easier to find. You're not going to be able to find Croatian Tribby Dragon. That's what they call it in Croatia. You won't be able to find those everywhere. I mean, yeah, hey, Loy. All my friends out there asking me for duck rice.
Good pairing for duck rice and cheese. Sounds good.
Okay. Have beer, Loy.
Can wine be appreciated like on its own, or would you recommend like pairing with food for like better experience?
No, I mean, I think wine can complement food very well. And in my opinion, like I always have wine with food. Like if I'm having it at home, normally I don't really have it on its own. Yeah, personally, for me, like if I was gonna have a drink just at home by myself, it's probably gonna be a beer or a cider, which I've been getting very into. I really enjoy ciders. Very good for the climate here in Singapore. But but wine, I think if you pair, if you know sort of your way around pairing wines with food, it can really complement the experience. And honestly, pairing again it's quite it's really individual. So if you if you like cheese and you want to have something with it, but you don't like red wine, you try having cheese with off-dry white wines, like a Riesling, for example, that's got a bit of sweetness to it. Or even a Chenin Blanc from the Loire with a bit of sweetness to it. These wines complement cheese really well. And I've always enjoyed cheese with slightly sweeter white wines myself. I don't like having red with cheese. I find the tannins really sort of like cloying almost in my mouth with the texture of the cheese. But, again, it's very personal. When I do pairings in a restaurant, I try to sort of find a middle ground and try to see and try to listen to what our guests have to say, and I sort of build it up that way.
How would you describe your style as a sommelier?
So for me, I think hospitality is very important. I think it's something that we often overlook here. When we as sommeliers, we work in a hospitality industry. It means being warm, it's being welcoming, with a smile and being, kind and polite. And I think oftentimes we forget that, and we think that knowledge is the most important thing. But really, as much as, your knowledge is important, it should be, intuitive to you. But let that take the back seat and first learn to greet your guests properly. And I think that's my style. I think I like to have conversations with my guests at the restaurant, get to know them better, and perhaps try to figure out what wines that they might enjoy based on what I understand about them, what they've had before.
So would you say that it's more about like hospitality and service, but not about educating or teaching? It's more towards like sharing and recommending new things that they may be interested in.
Yeah, pretty much. I've been to restaurants where they say, I've been told that, oh no, you shouldn't have this with that. You're gonna have this, and that to me felt like, like someone's trying to impose what they think on me and trying to sort of educate me. But really, I think what you should be doing is trying to understand where the customer's coming from, and try to make that work for them, and really sort of accommodate that for them, pretty much.
Cool. Do you want to take a short wine break? Because you've been cheers. If you guys have something to drink, please drink it with us as well. Okay. So I have one last question on myself, and for myself, there's also a bunch of questions from the viewers here. So one last question from me: what are your tips to picking a great wine if you have not shared already?
So can you repeat the question?
So what's your tips to picking a great bottle of wine that you have not mentioned in this conversation already? What other tips do we look out for to pick the bottle?
The bottle, right? Okay,
Yeah.
well, I mean, as much as I hate to admit, I think familiarity is a good way to go about it. So if you recognize any brands, perhaps you've seen brands somewhere. I mean, brands offer consistency. You really cannot go wrong. Well, to a certain extent with brands. Like for example, in the supermarket just near my home, you can find wines by Michel Chapoutier. Now, this is a very respected sort of winery in the south of France, and I found a wine that they made, called Marius or Marius Blanc. This is a project of theirs, more specifically within the Languedoc-Roussillon region of France. It was a blend of Vermentino and Terret. So these are sort of indigenous grapes to the Mediterranean area. It was really high quality. The wine was complex, and then just really refreshing at very good value. And also, I think if you find names that you've seen before, on TV, or basically, generally you're better off. Like you'll be able to find something that you'd enjoy. Another wine that I found in supermarkets recently was the Cape Mental wines. These were, this is probably one of the most iconic wineries of Western Australia. Very classic, juicy, fruit-forward Cabernet Merlot blend, kind of like a Bordeaux blend, but in Australia.
All right. You were also seen buying supermarket wine, right? What 2 bottles would you recommend that we can get in NTUC?
Very well. So I think I just mentioned 2, yeah, both from NTUC. So the Marius Blanc and the Cape Mental. These 2 are pretty awesome. There's some by Fraisenet as well, a very big Spanish wine company. Those wines were pretty good and offered good quality for price point. Yeah, and Paul and Sons as well if you find any. Cool.
Okay, so let's go through the questions from the audience. I heard also you're a very good singer. Would you sing us a song later?
Oh yeah, sure.
Okay, so we have a question from, let me see. Okay, from Adro. What are your thoughts on natural wine movement as comparison to conventional wine for wine enthusiasts?
All right, so I think natural wine is it's provided people the opportunity to get into wine without trying to figure out the intricacies or like the complexity of the whole wine world. It's very straightforward. It's juicy. It's fun. It's easy to drink, at least for the most part. And you don't really, and there's no sort of like pretense or pretentiousness associated with the wines. It's very straightforward. It's fun. And usually it's quite affordable. Well, versus conventional winemaking, this probably makes for the method in which most wines are made around the world. Well, conventional winemaking is basically winemaking with some level with chemical sort of interference in the vineyard and in the winery. It's been used in practice for about 50 years since the World Wars. So it's 2 different worlds, right? So natural wines are completely different, and I think if you enjoy it, there are so many good natural winemakers out there. Even myself, I have a few that I really enjoy that I would drink quite often. And I think right now what is happening with natural wines is you've got the good ones that are sticking around and really making and really improving every year. and they're trying to figure out that, well, some wine faults need to be kept at a very sort of like minimum, threshold where it doesn't really become a fault. I think we're still figuring it out. But I think for the time being, it's great. I mean, you got natural wine bars opening up quite quickly, and they seem to be doing pretty well. And I'm glad that everybody and more people are able to enjoy drinking wines this way.
Yeah. It's pretty cool, right? How long can you store an open bottle of wine in the fridge?
Well, honestly, I wouldn't keep a wine open for more than 2 days because you start to lose a lot of the more volatile aromas that are in the wine. It tends to sort of like deteriorate over time. I mean, you can keep it for like 5-6 days, but I wouldn't keep it for more than 2 if you really want to enjoy the wine. There is something you can use called a Coravin. So this is this is pretty cool. So it works by sending a needle into the cork. I'll show you.
Where can you get it?
You can. Good question, right? I think you can find it at maybe Takashimaya. I got a friend that sells this actually. Maybe I can put the link up later on. But you should be able to find it. Just have a look online. Mm-hmm. It's called Coravin. So Coravin. So basically, you got the top of the bottle. Put it like this, and you just push it down. So once the needle is in, you have access to the wine, and you can just tip it like that, and push. Then when you're done, just take it out like that. So with every push of this button, you send argon gas into the bottle, and the pressure pushes the wine out. And argon gas is an inert gas, so it doesn't react with the wine, and the wine doesn't develop, so it stays as good as new the whole time.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah.
All right. So where can you find good wine books? Where do you buy most of your wine books from?
So I buy all my wine books on Book Depository online. I've been buying from them for many years. Because they've got a good selection. There are not a lot of wine books here you can find locally. I think Kinokuniya might have a few, but then again, those are the more popular, more commercial books. But if you really want to find something, maybe very specifically on organic or biodynamic wines or natural wines like this book here, all these you need to find it on Book Depository. They have one of the best selections of wine books I've ever seen. So,
cool.
Definitely check that out. Yeah.
And for beginners who's getting into wine, what is more important to look out for? Would you say that like the region or village is more important, or the producer or the varietal or variety?
So that's the thing with old world and new world wines, right? So with old world wines, like take French and Spanish wines, for example, you never really see the grape variety on the label. And it's always, like, for example, Pinot Noir. I don't think. Oh, okay, well, this says Pinot Noir, but most bottlings will not, and you're left there wondering like, what is Sancerre, and what is Anjou, but this requires some level of understanding of the region and what grapes sort of planted there, and it's something that you will have to learn over time. And so I think that can be quite prohibitive as well, and it'd be easy to pick something from Australia that says like Cabernet Sauvignon. So I think, if that is easier for you, go for it and try to figure out where Cabernet Sauvignon is planted more extensively, apart from parts of Australia, and where it originates from, and then perhaps you can make your way into starting to figure out old world wines and regions. Yeah.
Nice. So on the other side of the world, like Westerners usually drink wine on a daily basis, right? And for us, like on the East, like it's like we don't really drink wine, and it's sort of like looked upon as like a atas like drink, or like for exclusive like people. What are your thoughts on it?
Wine and I mean, wine has always been viewed as like a sophisticated drink. It was the choice of more affluent people as a beverage, throughout history. Actually, at least in the more recent parts of history. But I think again, natural wines have sort of broken that barrier. Wine is a lot of it is about expressing what you taste and what you smell and what you sort of feel from the wine, and it takes some level of understanding to really communicate what you feel and taste about it, and you're also how well spoken you are. It all helps, and I think in the past maybe more affluent people had the time and money to afford good wine and start to really talk about its complexity and nuances. But again, with natural wine, I think that's become a lot more accessible. Right now there are lots of wineries that make very sort of fruit forward wine that are juicy and approachable. That I think anyone can grasp or understand. In fact, I think it's the perfect time to start looking at regions that have not necessarily been associated with quality for the longest time, because these wines have become very expensive, and the wines have become very expensive and quite prohibitive.
Cool. Could you share what you're tasting with the wine that you're drinking now?
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, this is a Pinot Noir, right? So there are a few things that you associate with Pinot Noir. It's very sort of, especially if it's a young Pinot, you'd expect to pick up lots of vibrant sort of red fruit. So when I say red fruit, looking at like maybe red cherries, red currants, raspberries, and you get all of those here in ample amounts. So you can tell like this wine, it's very fruit forward, I think, to be honest. But there's one more thing that really sort of draws my attention here. It's its minerality, something that I picked up before I even understood what the label meant, which is explosion of limestone. But you do get that tension about it on the nose, and a hint of like sandalwood from the oak use, and on the palate. I mean, the most striking thing about this wine, I think, is the acidity on the palate. Tannins are very soft, and they're very gentle, not too grippy, but quite lasting. I still feel the tannins in my mouth. Finish is also quite persistent, and very good concentration of flavor. Doesn't feel sort of insipid or thin in any way. You get a bit more of that tomato sort of flavors on your mouth, which is quite typical of Pinot Noir.
Awesome.
Yeah, so that's pretty much it.
I also noticed that you stir it quite a bit to aerate it, right? And it's also a recommended practice to decant wine before drinking it. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so wines can benefit a lot from some oxygen after being in the bottle for so long. And swirling the wine in your glass will help sort of coat the sides of your glass with wine, and it will allow some of the lesser volatile aromas to leave the glass and get into your nose where you can smell them. So yeah, swirling helps the wine open up and show it's the rest of what it's about. Some wines need to be opened for a while longer. They can seem very they cannot be very expressive at the beginning, and those wines generally need to be decanted. So you decant wines for two main reasons. So either if the wine is really, really young and it's a very full-bodied wine, like a full-bodied Cabernet Sauvignon, for example, of like 2 or 3 years old, like those 5 years old, you need to decant those and sort of let it open up for about an hour. Whereas old wines, very, very old wines, I think you should definitely decant as well to get rid of the sediment in the wine bottle, because tannins in wine, they are insoluble, along with some acids as well. So as they precipitate out, they turn into sediment. So you want to make sure you don't get the sediment in the wine. So you do a decant, but decant that right when you're about to drink, so that because old wines are very, very fragile, and a lot of the aromas will leave, the wine very quickly. So you might want to decant older wines closer to the time that you're having.
All right. So we have one last question from Yvonne. How would you describe, like, wine is juicy? How would you describe that experience of a juicy wine?
Describe the experience of a juicy wine.
In coffee, sort of like explain or describe the experience. It's almost like when you're biting into like a fresh fruit.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much, right? Like when you don't get a lot of spice, or you don't get lots of other things in the wine, where it's just like pure fruit, you get lots of like juicy or plums. Or white wine, you get lots of like, some wines can taste like biting into a Fuji apple, like a red apple. I think that's what you call juicy. And where it's very fruit driven, and a lot of New World wines are really about that. I think they put fruit quality before anything else, or fruit forwardness before anything else. But that's again changing. Yeah.
Cool. So I also heard that you're a great singer.
Oh yeah, apparently. But
what song would you? Which song are you able to sing for us today?
Well, I'll sing something by the Beatles. So
all right, show some love. Show some love. There's the heart button at the bottom. Show some love for Vinod.
So I used to. So it's funny. Like I should share this, right? So like I knew Leon, so the founder of Papa Paletta. Like I met him first at his wedding, which this was many years ago. I think it was like 2013, maybe. I don't know. But I used to sing at weddings there with a few of my friends, and we used to play, and that's all that we used to do before. And first time I met Leon was at his wedding when I was singing for him. And but later I asked him if I could work in the bar with him at Chai Seng Huan. That was where I began working with coffee for a while. And shortly after that, back into wine. And here I am. So this one's for Leon. I ran into Leon just 1 week ago.
Well, you were buying supermarket wine, right?
Yeah. No, actually. Yeah. And I ran into him there, and the first thing he said, like, "Oh, did you get the text about Instagram Live?" He's like, you have to sing. You have to sing." And I was like, "Okay." All right, so this song is called Blackbird by the Beatles. Blackbird singing in the dead of night. Take these broken wings and learn to fly. All your life, you're only waiting for this moment to arrive. Blackbird singing in the dead of night. Heal these sunken eyes and learn to see. All your life, you're only waiting for this moment to be free. Blackbird fly, blackbird fly, into the night of dark black light.
Thank you very much for sharing that with us.
Oh yeah, no, you're very welcome. There you go. So first time I picked up
underwear, Leon says, "Marry me, you beautiful man." That's funny. Okay, so just to recap, so For the viewers that are still here with us today, we are extending. Would you like to share the promo code instead?
Oh yeah. So for Les Bistro du Sommelier, so that's it's a French bistro, excellent charcuterie, cheese, and wine. So the promo code is Cloudstreet. So just CLOUDSTREET. You get 10% off store-wide. So if you want to try the Pinot Noir by Pierre Girardin, is where you can get it.
Nice.
And also I hope to see you at Cloudstreet when we reopen again someday. Right now we're doing a takeaway for Kotua. So Kotua is our Sri Lankan project that was supposed to open in April because of circuit breaker we couldn't, and we are doing takeaway for Sri Lankan food by Rishi, all online. So you can check that out on the website as well, and the link is just there.
All right. So thank you very much for joining us on this Coffee On session today. So this is picking a bottle with Vinod. So thank you very much for joining us, for everyone, and Vinod for sharing his philosophy on wine. So you can rewatch these at PPP Coffee at our YouTube channel. So this is where we do our cheers. Stay safe, stay home. Coffee on.
Cheers.
Cheers, Vinod. Thank you very much.
Thank you.